Hello. So in this video, we're going to be talking about Plautus's play Curculio. So once again, as with Miles Gloriosus, I have not looked up the proper pronunciation of any of the names. So again, if you are an ancient Roman, a native Latin speaker, or if you have performed in Curculio and I am mispronouncing all of this stuff, I do apologize. So Curculio is quite a short play. I'm reading it out of the Loeb Classical Library edition, one of the most credible of ancient scholarly editions. And in the introduction, Wolfgang de Melo, who's the editor and translator of this edition, sort of talks about how this is probably a cut-down version of a Greek new comedy, but we're not 100% sure because we don't have the original play that Plautus cut down, but there are some things in it that don't really make that much sense. And so the assumption is that in the larger Greek play that Plautus adapted, some of those things were explained, and Plautus sort of skimmed out some of these bits and pieces. The overall plot still functions, but there is some sort of weird question marks of like, why is why is this specific thing happening? So Curculio, the titular character, the Weevil, as his which is his nickname, Curculio has been sent by his sort of patron, I guess. Curculio is described as a hanger-on. He's kind of in the position of the cunning slave, but he's not a slave. So he's a sort of in-between character. But Curculio is a sort of associate of Phaedromus. And Phaedromus is the young male lover. He is trying to get Palinura, or he's trying to get Planasium, who is his beloved. She is chaste, but she is a slave of Cappadox, who is the evil pimp. All of these are stock figures in comedy, right? So you have the young, beautiful Planasium, who is the object of desire for Phaedromus. Basically, the objective is for Phaedromus to buy Planasium out of slavery, and especially out of the brothel of Cappadox. So he has sent Curculio to this other city of Caria to go to Phaedromus's friend and basically get some money from that friend so that Phaedromus can buy Planasium out of slavery. And so the first portion of the play is basically sort of background and setup for this, right? So we see a secret meeting arranged between Phaedromus and Planasium, which is sort of set up by Leana, who is this sort of old woman who is the kind of gatekeeper of Cappadox's house. And basically, Phaedromus gives her wine, and in exchange, she lets Planasium come out and see Phaedromus for a while. This very sort of beautiful, touching scene of their dedication is really interrupted by Palinurus, who is Phaedromus's slave, who kind of won't shut up, etc. And, you know, it's a funny bit. I don't think it's the funniest bit to read, but in performance, I think it would be a lot funnier. So that's the opening bit. Then Curculio shows back up. Basically, he arrives, and Curculio's big trait is that he's always hungry. He is a glutton. And you can, of course, have a tremendous amount of fun with that in performance. So Curculio shows up. He's like, oh, I'm fainting from hunger. Get me large amounts of food, and I will tell you what happened in Caria. And basically, what happened in Caria was that Curculio goes to the friend, and the friend is like, man, I really wish that I could help Phaedromus, but I don't have any money. So, this is where a thing that's incredibly unlikely and doesn't make that much sense happens. Curculio runs into Therapontagonus, or he's got a full name. I can find it really quickly. Therapontagonius Platagidoris. I'm just going to call him Therapontagonus because that is tough enough to say on its own. So Therapontagonus is your stock swaggering soldier. And Curculio runs into him in Caria. There's no indication in Curculio, in Plautus's play, that they know each other in any way. They just sort of meet up, and Curculio is like, hey, what are you doing in this city? You want to hang out and chat about our affairs? And Therapontagonius is like, yes, I would love to do that. In fact, let's go have some dinner where I will tell you about how back in Epidaurus, which is where this play is set, I, Therapontagonius, at taking this random person I don't know to dinner, will tell you all about how I am about to go back to Epidaurus from Caria, from this other city that neither of us live in, so that I can go to my banker and I can get out the money that I need in order to go to this brothel/slave owner so that I can buy this girl that I have made arrangements to buy. And it just so happens, completely arbitrarily, that Therapontagonius is going to Cappadox's brothel to buy Planacium. And this is all revealed to Curculio over dinner, where, along with the fact that Therapontagonius needs to present his signet ring to Lyco, the banker in Epidaurus, in order to get this money to go to Cappadox and get Planacium. So, Curculio, thinking very quickly, develops a plan where he will get Therapontagonius drunk and then steal the signet ring. Curculio then takes the signet ring, goes back to Epidaurus, goes to Phaedromus, and is basically like, listen, man, here's what we're going to do. I couldn't get the money, but it doesn't matter. We're going to take this signet ring. You're going to feed me a large meal. And while we do that, I'm going to dictate to you some letters. We're going to seal them with Therapontagonius' signet ring. I'm going to dress up like a soldier, and I'm going to go to Lyco, the banker. I'm going to get Therapontagonius' money, because the tablets or whatever it is that you're going to write will basically say, I, Therapontagonius, empower you, Lyco, to give the money to this guy, and Curculio calls himself Summinus. There's a lot of interesting bits in this play where De Mello has sort of translated these very sort of bawdy jokes from Latin into English, and they do sound slightly strange. Suminus, I'm not sure if that's translated, but basically the sort of gag is built around some anus, right? So Curculio's disguise is he's just playing some ass, right? Or some asshole, maybe is more accurate. So Curculio goes in the guise of Suminus to Lyco, gives him the tablets, tells these outrageous lies about the conquests of Therapontagonus, at which point Lyco is like, well, you have the seal of the signet ring, and you're lying about Therapontagonius's exploits in precisely the same way that Therapontagonus lies about his exploits, so I will believe you, I will give you this money, we will head over to Cappadox, we will give him the money, and then he will give you Planasium. So everything is going swimmingly, right? Curculio gets hold of Planasium, gives her to Phaedromus, they all go in the house, then Therapontagonus shows up, and he's like, I am enraged, and I'm going to Lyco to get my money, I'm going to then go to Cappadox and get my concubine, and Therapontagonus, when Therapontagonus gets to Lyco, Lyco says, I already gave your dude the money, so you can suck an egg, because I'm not giving you anything else. Therapontagonus is not thrilled with this answer, but he eventually goes over to Cappadox, and Cappadox is like, yeah, sorry, I already released the girl to your dude, Suminus. And Therapontagonus is like, there is no Suminus. What the fuck are you talking about? Give me my woman. And Cappadox is basically like, yeah, no, sorry. Suck an egg. At roughly the same point, Curculio runs out into the street, being pursued by Planasium and Phaedromus, because Planasium has seen the signet ring that Curculio stole from Therapontagonus, and she's like, give me that ring, because that is the ring of my father. We now see where this is starting to come together. So, Phaedromus grabs hold of Curculio, makes him turn over the ring. Planasia is like, where did you get this? It'll reunite me with my family. Therapontagonus shows up and he's like, Curculio, you stole my ring. Give it back. And Planasia, and basically it's sort of revealed that Planasia is basically, it's revealed that Planasia is Therapontagonus' sister, at which point he is substantially less keen on sleeping with her, in part because of the whole incest angle, and in part because of the fact that she is actually freeborn, and so Cappadox had no actual right to sell her as a slave. So, that's an important plot point because several times earlier in the play, Cappadox had been reminded of his promise that if anyone claimed that Planasium was freeborn, then Cappadox would give back the money. So, Planasium is now freed from slavery, from concubinage. She is freed from having to marry, or at least be the sex slave of Therapontagonus, or Therapontagonus, sorry. So that works out. And Therapontagonus gets his money back because Cappadox, again, the evil brothel keeper, had agreed that if someone claimed she was freeborn, then he would give the money back, and now they know who Planasium is, and Therapontagonus knows that his sister is free, so that all works out. Phaedromus and Planasium are each like, yeah, we'd like to marry each other, and Therapontagonus is like, well, as long as you want to marry each other, I give you my permission. Curculio is like, hey, as a dowry from me, you guys can make sure that I always have plenty of food, which of course is the thing that Curculio wants. So basically it works out well for everybody except Calpadox, who again is the evil pimp and therefore not really someone that we're all that worried about. Yeah, I mean, this is what we've got going on. So the reason that I have read Curculio, I don't think I mentioned this earlier in the video, but I did mention this in my Miles Gloriosus video. The reason that I've read Curculio is that, according to Wikipedia, this is one of 4 plays that Stephen Sondheim's A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum is based on. And it is in a minor way, in that the ring revelation, the brother and sister reunited, freeing up the girl to marry her actual beloved, that all does happen in Forum. And so this is one bit that's sort of drawn from Curculio. But it's interesting because it's also not sort of exclusive to Curculio. This idea of the sort of revelation by signs, or the recognition by signs of relationships between 2 characters, is actually quite common theatrically, and it's not exclusively a comic convention, because we see this, for instance, in Aeschylus's Libation Bearers. We see this in the Electra plays of Sophocles and Euripides, where, in this case, one character, Orestes, comes to the shrine of their father, and there's variations of this in the different plays. And indeed, Euripides is most cynical about this, of the 3 Greek tragedians, whose versions of this story survive to today. Orestes comes to the tomb of their father Agamemnon, and he leaves certain tokens, like things like a lock of his hair, a particular piece of cloth that he was given as a baby, whatever it is, right? The signs vary slightly across the different versions. But basically then Electra comes to the tomb, and she's like, this hair, it could only be Orestes's hair. So that's one where it's like, okay, maybe not. There's one version where it's like she steps into his footprints and their feet are the same, and so that's the sign that it's Orestes. And it's like, it doesn't really make that much sense. And again, Euripides points this out, right? Euripides sort of draws attention to how ridiculous this idea is, but we have this tradition sort of linked to anagnoresis, which is the term that Aristotle uses in the Poetics for the recognition. And it's not quite exactly what Aristotle means most directly, but it is connected, right? The recognition of one character by another, or the relationships between characters that allow for the climax and conclusion of the play. And this sort of tradition of recognition by signs is a really interesting one, because, again, as Euripides points out in his version, it is quite untrustworthy. And indeed, one of the things in Forum is that control of the rings doesn't necessarily remain with the person that it's supposed to, right? Erroneous at one point walks off, leaving his ring, which is supposed to be which is the sort of sign by which he'll recognize his children. He walks off and leaves his ring with Pseudolus and Hysterium, and then Hysterium is given the ring at some point, and Erroneous mistakes Hysterium for his child, right? So this idea of the recognition by tokens. Tokens is probably a better term than signs, right? The recognition by tokens is actually quite a fraught endeavor, and yet many, many plays, especially in the Orestes cycle, rely on this. And Curculio relies on this, right? The happy ending where Planesium gets to marry Phaedromus only happens if Therapontigonus recognizes that Planesium is his sister, and he does not want her as a concubine anymore.